a sensibility. I mean, first that I watch movies, but I mean, it might be the sense of, I think, well, I'm going to say this, but I mean, everybody's going to say, well, mine is too. But I think my family's kind of weird. Okay. And I think most families are weird in their own way, and that's what makes it interesting. Um, but, but that was weird. I think sometimes there were things in school where, I sometimes felt like an outsider. And I think the idea of horror kind of deals with that a little bit. It's the sense of somebody being different or of rules not being the same. I mean, I don't have a specific incident, but actually, I'll tell you an incident. This one is from later in life. A story it's just kind of seems emblematic of what a horror moment is to me. And it was when I was living alone in Washington, D.C., and I had this apartment that was in the basement of a house, basically, that the landlord had very cheaply kind of just put in like paper thin walls to like separate it into apartments so he could rent it out and make a lot of money, I guess. But there was something wrong with the stove. Like everything in the like, if I went in and touched anything on the stove, I would get an electric shock. So there was some kind of short in the stove. So I was saying somebody needs to fix this. And he gave me all these elaborate instructions. Well, I'll come in and do it, but you've got to go and make a copy of the house key, and you've got to leave it in this place, and you've got to. And I tried to do it, but it didn't work. Like I couldn't get the key to work or whatever. And he was very like rude to me about it. But he did finally come to fix it. I let him in. And while he was doing it, I got in this kind of irate customer mode. I know this is a long story, but I'm getting near the end. I got in this irate customer mode, and I'm like, I don't appreciate you because I was paying him. I don't appreciate the way you spoke to me on the phone, blah, blah, blah. And he was leaning over fixing the stove, and he stood up. And at that moment, I realized like he was like 7 feet tall and much bigger than I am. And we're in this kind of small apartment. And he looked at me and said, "You don't know who I am. I will break your arms." And after that, I kind of backed down and said, well, I was just, and it was all sort of fine, right? But but it was one of those moments where like the rules changed. Like I'm sitting here thinking that I'm, here I am, just this customer, and I get to complain and get to have things done my way because I'm paying rent here or whatever. And suddenly I was like this potential victim, right, out of nowhere, right? And I think, like, for me, life does that to people, right? That what happens to you in life is you go along thinking that things are going to go a certain way, that rules are going to, everybody's going to